That's how much it is. I'm already doing that job. I just
Trời, má là bà này nó nhưng mà bà khỏe lắm, bà không đi được. Má đâu? Rồi có công tư liên.
cái đó mà không nghĩ.
Nói gì phải không? Em lại đây cái gì đó nha. Không biết gắn. Nó làm mà được. Nó không ra biết không? Được đó. Không nhớ không? Cái này nè. Mà coi là cái thử của cả không biết gắn.
Which one is more expensive though? Obviously the 8. How about the 8 plus? No, this actually not mine. This edit. There was a teaser.
Gì mà không đó?
Pink, this pink, this red, this yellow, different colors. I know, right? No, I think it's the same thing. Who just saying that? That's
ở dạ ở lỏng hay
chết nữa. Cái này để xài nguyên không? Alo.
đọc đã nợ liền như vậy đưa vô đây thôi
Bắt đầu
tới chỗ này đi
That's okay, only 3 minutes.
là cái giọng nhảy mà thằng nhảy
thử giống như nhiều tiếng nó nhỏ, nhiều lúc mình vào giống như không cho mình để
Stay that long, right? No, you can't. No, you can't. How do you die?
Why is there two? Okay, hello. Welcome back. So we took a little break in December, towards the end of December, and now we're back for more exciting lectures about just like the Buddhist religion and everything that it entails. So welcome back and thank you for listening. Well, I'll start off with like for the next couple series of lectures, we're going to be talking about like the Eightfold Path, and like I felt like just to recap what we've learned like in the previous time, like we spoke about like the 5 precepts, and some of you guys remember like 5 precepts are like basically rules that you should not engage in, and then we talked about the triple gem, which is like the Buddha, the Sangha, and the Dharma, things that are offered within the Buddhist tradition. And then we talked a little bit about the Four Noble Truths. Like, so all these little fundamental concepts of Buddhism, like you guys should just keep in mind, right? Because we try to recycle the material over and over again. But I'll open this lecture with this like little tiny story. So when the Buddha was like 30, he began his journey, right? To discover like what is the actual truth of the world. That's A. He like spent 5 years, just sitting in meditation and also being living the life of an ascetic. The life of an ascetic basically means somebody who doesn't get to eat a lot and somebody who just sits there and meditating, right? That's a really, really difficult life. And it wasn't until like 5 years later that he actually come to like this big, deep realization, right? And actually, like he's arrived at a certain level of enlightenment. And I don't know if you guys know like the significance of this day in particular. Like normally when we have like normal like Sunday lectures, it's like a couple of people, but today there's actually a lot more people because it's a specific holiday, right? And the specific holiday is like the day when he becomes enlightened, right? And the question is, what did he become enlightened about? Well, exactly the things that I'm going to be talking about, which was like Four Noble Truths and also the Eightfold Path, which is one of the Four Noble Truths. All right, so here's like the tiny story to open this up. When the Buddha was 80 years old, and he lived all the way up to 80, he's about to die. There comes a person who says, you know, and like for most of his life, the Buddha's like lecturing all these people, right, about like the Dharma and everything that he's learned, everything about the truths that he's learned. But when he's 80 years old, he's about to die. And there's this person who comes, and it's one of the final people who get to see him. And they're like, I have a question for you. And his attendant, Ananda, right? He has an attendant. He says, oh no, it's too late for visitors. Don't come asking the Buddha for anything. He's about to die, right? What do you have? What questions do you have for the Buddha? He's about to die. And yet the Buddha's like, no, let the guy come in, right? So he says, okay, you have one last question to ask the Buddha. And so the guy's like, all right, here's my question. Sure. During that era, there was a lot of different types of people like trying to figure out what the ultimate truths were, right? And they were set in India. A lot of people. And so this guy comes and he asks the Buddha, have all the other teachers, and Buddha wasn't the only teacher, but there were other teachers teaching other religions, right? And he asked the Buddha, are all the other teachers from the other religions fully enlightened? And the Buddha's like, well, he knew that he had a short time to reply, right? And so his response was very interesting. He says, it really doesn't matter if the other teachers are enlightened, right? Does it matter? Why do you care? What really does matter is whether you want to be liberated or not, whether you want to be enlightened or not, right? And he says, if you choose to be enlightened, if you choose to follow this path of liberation, then just follow the Eightfold Path. And he says, there, within the Eightfold Path, you'll find joy, peace, and insight, okay? And that's a really interesting response. Like, imagine, you're about to die, the Buddha's about to die. You have this person comes in asking this question about whether other teachers are enlightened like the Buddha is, and he's like, don't worry about it, don't worry about that. If you want to find enlightenment, the question really is, do you want to find enlightenment? And if you do, here's the plan. Follow this Eightfold Path. And so, for the next couple of lectures, I'm going to be talking about the Eightfold Path. It's a key tenet in Buddhist tradition, okay? But before I talk about the Eightfold Path, I actually have to, I'll start and then I'll stop. The first thing that we're going to be talking about, the first path within the Eightfold Path is something known as the right view, okay? And there's lots of facets to it, but now I'm just gonna step back one bit. I don't know if you guys remember, but the Buddha came up with something called the Four Noble Truths. Okay, that's one of his first realizations. And the Four Noble Truths states that, the first Noble Truth says, listen, we live in a constant state of suffering, right? That's it. Life is suffering. From the moment that you're born to the moment that you die, you live in a constant state of suffering. Very much like what just happened, right? Constant state of suffering. You're constantly hungry. You're constantly in need of things. That's the first noble truth that he figured out. The second noble truth is that there's causes to these sufferings, right? First, just anger causes suffering. Cravings causes suffering. And ignorance ultimately causes suffering. Third noble truth says you can actually stop suffering if you choose to, right? And the fourth truth is if you want to stop suffering, there's a way out for you, and that way out is by following the Eightfold Path, okay? And so, hence, the whole lecture is based on this Eightfold Path. Now, the first of the Eightfold Path is the right view. And the right view basically is a couple of things. The first is that it's a deep understanding of the Four Noble Truths. Do you guys understand? Well, I don't. It's a matter of, can you arrive at this understanding that this is an actual truth, that we are in a state of suffering? And if you step back and examine life, to some extent, if you look at life through that perspective, you can begin to see, oh yeah, there's a lot of suffering that goes on in life. And it's not just in your present life, but if you look across the world, there are a lot of people in a state of suffering, right? So that's the first part of the right view. The other half of the right view, that part of this Eightfold Path, is you distinguishing for yourself whether they call it wholesome and unwholesome roots. So basically, here's the deal. Within us, there are good ideas and bad ideas, right? Most of us, we're born with a blank slate. Think about babies, right? They don't know right from wrong. And yet, the question is, why are there like good people and bad people in this world? Why do certain people do good things and certain people do bad things? Well, it all stems from this idea of the right view. We have these certain roots in our consciousness, right? And if you choose to cultivate the good roots, then the good roots cultivate like the seeds, then it's going to blossom into who you are. But that doesn't mean that the bad seeds aren't present in you either, right? So the right view is about you distinguishing which seed within you want to be cultivating. For example, let's just say you're a very loyal person, right? Loyalty is a value of yours. The reason why you're loyal to begin with, right? Law of cause and effect, is because you've been like cultivated. You live in an environment where loyalty is valued. Or let's just say you're very respectful, especially if you're respectful to your parents, right? Why is that? Well, you live in an environment, in a culture where respect is very important, and you've been taught ever since you're young to be respectful. That doesn't mean that you can't be disrespectful either, that the seed of disrespect isn't within you, right? And there's plenty of kids or students out there who are like disrespectful to their parents or disrespectful to adults overall. You've seen them before. The question is, why is that? Why are they disrespectful? Well, it's because they're living in that environment, right? Where it's okay for them to be disrespectful. So the idea, just to like zoom out, the basic idea is this, right? There's like good and bad seeds within you, whether it's like respect or disrespect, loyalty or being unfaithful, or any of these like good and bad concepts. The right view is you guys on your own arriving at, what's right, what's wrong, what are you guys going to choose to do about this, okay? And you becoming aware of your seeds and that you don't put yourself into an environment where you're cultivating bad ideas, right? That's part of the right view. The other thing is, in terms of like understanding the Four Noble Truths, which is the first part of the right view, there's also, you guys have to understand like why we're here. Why are you guys even sitting here? Why are you guys listening to me to begin with, right? It's this idea that there's also a seed within every single one of us. You, me, everyone around here. And that's the seed of Buddhahood, okay? What's the seed of Buddhahood? Why are we sitting here to begin with? Seed of Buddhahood refers to everybody's capacity to really awaken and like see things as they are, okay? Like see the realities of the world, basically, the way that the Buddha saw it, okay? And the right view is, and this is, it's probably, it's deep if you, I don't know. Part of what they warn about is this. It's like, I can't, no matter how much you tell people, it's a process that you have to arrive at in understanding yourself. But it's good that I'm just telling you explicitly. All of you guys are here because you're capable of becoming the Buddha. And the Buddha just refers to a person who's awakened, okay? A person who really understands like the current realities, okay? But you have to put yourself into an environment very much like this environment where you're constantly examining your thoughts, constantly examining or understanding what the Dharma is teaching in order for you guys to develop the wisdom to arrive at that capacity or understanding, right? This is how like you cultivate like the right view. There's a third thing that I was going to talk about, which is perception. And ultimately, this is what view is referring to, right? It's like how you see things. how you look at something. And it's very interesting because within Buddhism, we talk about how life is a state of suffering. But have you ever noticed, and it's not just the monks sitting here, but a lot of the monks are really cheerful. And that's I always thought, why are they always laughing and smiling? And if you have a chance, you should observe the monk who sits here and talks. Because he's always laughing, he's always smiling, he always has a happy face. And if you have a chance to watch videos of the Dalai Lama, very important guy, but also very cheerful monk. Question is, why are some monks so happy? And this gets down to this core idea of the right view and perception, okay? So I'll just talk about it. Most of our suffering comes from our wrong perception of things. So let's just say a cloud passes by. Now I'm sure you play this game with your friends or something. A cloud passes by, and you could see a dog, but they see a pig, and somebody else sees a horse, and somebody else sees a flower. But it's the same cloud. What's that about? Well, it's about your perception, right? Each person's perception belongs to that one person, okay? But it's interestingly enough, because even though there's one reality, one objective reality, we can all experience that reality differently based on our perception, based on our view of how we see things, okay? So, for example, if let's just say you're a sad and depressed type of person, you walk around looking at the world in this negative viewpoint, where everything is really sad and depressed, etc. If you're a really angry person inside, you walk around and you see trouble everywhere. You see people who want to start trouble with you, right? You see people who want to pick a fight with you. But if you're a happy person, it's interesting because then you start to see the world in a happy light as well, which is really fascinating. And I'm going to connect this idea, but in December, in the last couple of weeks, I was able to go to Vietnam, right? And the best place where I found the most joy was in an alleyway. Because in Vietnam, especially in South Vietnam, in the big cities, the marketplace and the place where they sell all the food and stuff is in the alleyways, not on the main streets, because on the main streets are fancy restaurants and hotel buildings. But in the alleyways, you have people actually selling fish, fresh fish that they caught in the morning, fresh vegetables, everything that you can find. And people are just coming in, coming out, and then you have people who are just selling, trading, etc., etc., etc. And they're extremely happy. And I stepped back. I had to step back. I'm like, whoa, here I am, this American person, right? Coming to Vietnam. And I don't know if you, one of these days, when you guys get to travel, you understand, $1, $1, you really can't buy anything here for $1, right? Maybe a piece of gum or something. But you go to Vietnam, you could buy a full dinner or lunch with $1, right? Because that's how the money works. And so, let's just say, so $1 here is equivalent to $10 there. So here I am, coming from America, a lot of money in my hand, or a lot of dollars, which is worth a lot of money. So technically, I'm really, really rich when I go to Vietnam, and you guys will be too. And yet, the people who were sitting in the marketplace were a lot more happier. And it's interesting. I had to step back. I'm like, how is that? How is that possible? And it's really a matter of their perspective, right? If you, and this is proven, even though we live in a state of suffering, if you guys shift your perspective, and this is part of what the Eightfold Path is about, this is how we develop the right view. You could get to a state where you're calm and happy and peaceful, right? And from what I observed, it's interesting. And this is scientifically proven too. One of the top techniques to becoming happy is giving gratitude for what you have. What's giving gratitude? It's basically saying, thank you for everything that you have around you. Do you guys ever stop and notice, like you guys have coats, you have clothing on you? Like really nice clothing. Did you ever stop and notice, like right now in this very moment, it's really warm in this room because you have heat in this room. Have you ever stopped and noticed that you guys are in just a Vietnamese community? Or that like you're getting to listen to this message in English? Or that you're super healthy? Sometimes you don't actually appreciate what you have until you don't have it. For example, the other day, maybe like 2 months ago, I fell on my wrist, right? I was on a scooter and I fell on my wrist. Do you know how much function your wrist has? Like lifting things, pulling things, and turning the doorknob, or using your key to open a door? If you don't have your wrists, do you know how much pain you would go through? You only miss the things that you don't have when they're gone, right? So one of the key ideas of like becoming happy is actually developing a sense of gratitude for everything that you have around you. And that's what I actually observed in like these people in the alleyways, in the markets of Vietnam. They seem so happy, but it also is probably because they're so grateful for everything that they have, right? And so this is like a manner in which you guys can begin cultivating the right view. Shift your perspective, whatever you're feeling. I mean, wherever you are, I would argue that like, be grateful first, right? Learn to be grateful. The more that you learn to be grateful, the happier you become, right? Keep in mind, you're alive, you're breathing, you're healthy, you're smart, you're young, you have a lot of potential out there. What's there to be sad about, right? What's there to be angry about? And whatever problems that you guys think you may have, imagine if you were 7 again. Imagine a 7-year-old's problem. Let's just say a 7-year-old's problem is that he or she can't get a toy. Think back when you were 7 and when you couldn't get that toy. Think about how devastated you are. How big is that problem compared to what you guys have to deal with now? And whatever problem that you have now, think like 20 years from now. How big is whatever problem that you have now relative to the size of like who you are, who you're going to be in 20 years when you become lawyers and doctors, etc. Right? Most problems in our brains, we make it like seem like the biggest deal in the world, and yet you need to develop perspective, right? You need the right view, and if you step back, you'll be able to see, oh yeah, it's not actually a big problem at all. When you are able to do that, you become less angry and less, for the lack of a better word, less ignorant about your state of being. Okay? And I just made this connection this morning, and I'm super excited. What's the opposite of gratitude? What's the opposite of being grateful for things? The word is entitlement, right? And have you ever heard of this word? If you've never heard of this word, the word entitlement has a very negative connotation, right? But it's also an example of something that's the wrong view. Entitlement basically means you think that you deserve this, this, and that. And once you get that, you deserve more of that, right? Why? And I don't know if you guys have ever met anybody who is entitled. I've met a couple of people. And they have the worst attitude about things because nothing is enough. They just want more. The question is, why is entitlement a wrong view? Think about this. Why is it, like for example, let's just say your parents get you guys a phone, right? And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, they get you like an Android. And you're like, wait a minute, an Android? This isn't an iPhone. Why'd you give me an Android? Why not an iPhone, right? That's what entitlement is. Why is that the wrong view? Why is that the opposite of gratitude? Well, first off, you're getting the phone, right? Most people don't, I'm trying to like boil this down. Like, you're not even thinking, you're thinking, the reason why entitlement is the wrong view is, especially people who are entitled, is because they are constantly looking at what they don't have versus what they do have, right? And so, if you embark on this journey, the idea is for you to cultivate a lot more gratitude, okay? And if you look at these people, they're constantly craving things, right? Entitlement means you're constantly craving things. And based on Buddhism, and based on the second noble truth, what's the cause of suffering? Constant craving, constant attachment, etc., right? So the more that you are actually, if you want to distance yourself from like cravings, from attachments to things, learn to be grateful for what you have already. And the interesting thing is this, right? And somebody once told me this, and like, a teacher back in high school, a social studies teacher. It's gonna get really dark, okay? So he was like one of my favorite social studies teacher, and he had a funeral, right? He had a funeral for one of his parents, and he had to take 2 weeks off to have the funeral, and he comes back. And we're asking him if he's okay, and yeah, it's part of the process, it's part of life and stuff. But he said something that was really stuck to me. He said, one of these days, you guys will have to attend a funeral yourself, right? For your parents. So be grateful that they're still alive. Be grateful that they're still here with you. And learn to enjoy every moment with them. Isn't that great? Think about this, because this is how you cultivate gratitude, and enjoy your time here with your parents now, right? Appreciate them every day, because one of these days, you're going to have to attend their funeral, right? So, I know, that sounded really dark, but also there's a good message at the end, which is, you can really, if you choose to, cultivate, the right view, you can become very happy, because there are a lot of people, they won't realize this truth until it's too late for them, right? And then that's the worst position you want to be in, okay? So, here, I have 5 more minutes, so just to summarize this up, right? If you cultivate the right view, which is the first of the eightfold path, you're able to really cultivate happiness, right? And you liberate yourself a little bit from the suffering that a lot of people have. And trust me, if you have the wrong perception or the wrong view, you're never going to be happy, right? And so this is a good pathway. The other thing is this. I can't tell you what the right view is. Nor can your parents. That's just like me telling you what does an orange taste like if you've never tasted an orange before, right? Or me explaining to you what water tastes like. You have to do it for yourself, right? The right view, and you ever seen something where it's somebody tells a kid, don't do this, and then they do it anyway? That's like me telling you, okay, this is the right view, you have to follow it. No. It's really, you guys have to look at yourself and figure out, what are the correct perspectives that you want to cultivate within you, right? And Buddhism is not a matter of telling you this is the right view. Rather, it's really a matter of helping you eliminate wrong views, right? So, again, just to recap, right? The seeds of the right view are in you. Learn to cultivate them. Learn to look at yourself and figure out, what's right? What should I cultivate? And keep in mind, you guys are here because the seeds of Buddhahood are within you, right? You all have the capacity to awaken and become enlightened. That's why we're all here. And in this process, whether you know it or not, you're learning, you're reflecting, you're growing, and you're practicing all this is ultimately going to lead to wisdom in you one day, and that's the key, right? You can't reach that level of self-enlightenment without a little bit of wisdom. So that is it. Cool. Thank you. So next week we'll talk about the other steps in the Eightfold Path, which would be right thinking. I'll be giving like lectures all of January, and then I'll take a break in February, and all of March, and then I'll take a break in April, and then all of May. So that's how the schedule's going to work, so that you guys don't have to think so much. Okay? Any questions? Okay.